Have you ever topped a pepper plant or rooted a sweet potato? How about dividing some of your vegetable seedlings? Today we're going to work on seedlings. Hello everybody, this is Deb from Just Do Something Homestead, and today we are going to take a look at some of the seedlings that I started several weeks ago and get them ready to plant outside. My pepper plants are now about 4 inches tall. This is King of the North, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to top it. And last year was the very first time out of 30 years of gardening that I was brave enough to do this. I did half of my peppers last year where I topped them and half where I did not. And what do you think happened? You're right. The ones that I topped became twice as big as the others. So what exactly is topping a seedling? Well, let's look at this pepper a little closer. These are the 2 original leaves that came out. These were the first true leaves. And then we have a center part. That is the part that I'm actually going to pinch off. So right in between, I'm going to remove it just like that. This will cause 2 things to happen. First off, my stem is going to double in width, and that is particularly important when you are growing peppers. Peppers can get top heavy, and if you do not have a thick stem on your pepper plant, they can either break or bend over and touch the ground, and that's when you're just asking for diseases and pests. So you will double the width of your stem. Second, where you had 1 stem that was growing up the center, you will now have 2. One will go out that way and one will go out that way. You have successfully doubled the size of your pepper plant. I'm going to go ahead now and do the same thing on every one of my peppers. I am going to top it so that it will grow stronger and bigger. Next is cauliflower. It is growing its true leaves, and so I just started moving them into 6-packs that I can sell in my farm stand. One thing I'm going to do tonight is separate the ones that have 2 plants in 1 cell. I start all of my seeds in a mixture of 2 parts of organic potting soil and 1 part of seed starter, which is also organic. But once I start planting them into the little pots or into the 6-packs, I only use organic potting soil. I start by filling my 6-pack about halfway with potting soil, and I always make sure I put on the label because if I don't, I can certainly get them mixed up. I use a plain tablespoon from my kitchen to pop out the plants from the cells. I find that it fits really well and it makes it easier to pull them out. And it's just a process of lifting it out of the cell. At this point, I very gently separate the 2 seedlings. If I have to choose to pull on one, I always pull on the smaller one. But very carefully, it's not that difficult to pull them apart. I center them in the middle of the 6-pack in each one, and I try to plant it pretty deeply. As you can see from this one, it's not very far in the soil. And then I pack it tight with soil up to the top, and I mist it. I'm going to go through and find any others that have 2 in a cell and divide them into 6-packs. I separated 3 cells and actually doubled what I had, so now I have 6 plants. And the ones on the right are the ones I just separated. The ones on the left I separated a few days ago, so you can see how much better they do when they're not fighting for all the nutrients with 2 of them in 1 cell. Next, I'm going to separate some of my tomatoes. These are beefsteak, and although I intended to just have 1 tomato in each cell, I ended up with almost all of them had 2, and that happened because I planted older seed and said, I'll just put 2 in each cell. I'm sure they won't all grow. Well, they did. So the day that I planted 150 tomatoes, I ended up with 300. I plant my tomatoes differently than I do my broccoli and cauliflower and lettuces. Instead, I plant them directly into 4-inch pots. Now, saying that, I am not going to fill it to the top with potting soil. I'm actually going to put a teeny little bit of potting soil on the bottom. I'm going to put my transplant in there, and I'm only going to put the soil halfway up the pot. As my tomato plant grows, I will fill in with more potting soil, and that will keep it secure and growing without getting leggy. Here I have about a 1/2 inch of soil. It is just barely across the bottom of my new container. Just like I did for my cauliflower, I took a metal teaspoon and I reached into that cell and gently lifted out my 2 tomato seedlings. I'm going to very gently pull them apart and put each one in its own pot. The seedling goes way down in my pot, and I'm going to fill it halfway with potting soil. As you see here, my seedling is just barely sticking over the top of that cup. And as it grows, I will fill in with potting soil up to the top. Here is one of my beefsteak that I separated about 3 days ago. So again, look at the growth just by separating it and putting it into a larger pot where it's not sharing with one right next to it. I am often asked how to take care of the seedlings until you can get them outside. What I do is I put it back on my rack. It is no longer on a heat mat. You're not going to want to heat the soil after they have popped up. So don't continue to put it on a heat mat. So put it on your rack and put it 1 inch under your grow lights. I keep my grow lights on usually 12 hours on and 12 off because I rotate trays and I don't have enough lights for all of them. When I get to the point where some things are going out, I try to keep the lights on more like 16 hours a day. And lastly, the next thing I do is I only water from the bottom. So at this point, I am going to put water on the tray and it's going to absorb it up through the roots. That will cause the roots to go down. If you don't do that and you only water from the top, your roots are not going to go down and get larger in the bottom of the pot. It also is going to stunt some of your plants. So make sure you only water from the bottom. And lastly, I want to update you on sweet potatoes. Look at all the growth. And if you think that is amazing, look at the cuttings that I placed in water. Look at those roots. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to plant these in soil. This is what a sweet potato slip looks like. I have cut them off of the sweet potatoes themselves, placed them in a jar of water, and within a week they are completely covered in roots. So first things first, we're going to plant them into pots to sell in my road stand. And like my tomatoes, I have labeled a 4-inch pot. I am simply going to set the sweet potato down in there and add soil. And it's as simple as that. I have a tray of transplanted sweet potato plants and I am going to put them under my glow lights about 1 inch down. I will from this point on also water them from the bottom. Now it's time to cut these beauties down and get them rooting so I can start more plants. If it is relatively small, I will reach down to where it's coming out of the sweet potato and break it off of that mother plant. In fact, this one came real easy. Ooh, he's already started to root. So he's not going to be any problem to get him growing even more. So this is one that I simply broke off of the mother plant. And even though he has some roots starting, I am going to put him in water for about a week. When it comes to these larger ones, I just cut them off. And I know a lot of people are like, you cut them? I cut them, and you know what? They will root. So that one has a pretty low leaf on it, so I'm going to break that leaf off. Pull him off, we don't need him. All right, and then he will get roots right there. So another one that I place in water. So at this point, I am just gonna go across and I'm gonna cut off all those tall ones and pull off all the short ones. All of these are now going to root. And over here, these are the lower leaves that I cut off. These leaves, you don't want them to be in the water. So anytime you have a low leaf, you just cut it off. And let me tell you something crazy about sweet potatoes. The more slips you cut off, the more it will reproduce. So I easily will get about 100 slips for every tray of sweet potatoes I have. Another little thing about sweet potatoes, they're not really potatoes. They are yams. And so you need sweet potato slips to reproduce them. If you try to cut them into little pieces where there are eyes, it's very rare that they will grow like a regular potato would. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. And thank you so much for joining us today as we learned how to separate transplants, how to top off your peppers, and lastly, how to plant your sweet potato slips. Have a great night. Bye-bye.